What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of High Strangeness. We're going to be tackling another controversial topic, I guess you could say. We're going to be discussing Gary Webb. For those of you can see up here, for those of you who know who Gary Webb is or don't know who Gary Webb was, I'm going to take a little bit of the bio that they put out here on SpartacusEducational.com about Mr. Gary Webb. So Gary Webb was born in Corona, California, 1955. Webb worked for several newspapers, including the Kentucky Post and Cleveland Plain Dealer. Webb became a staff reporter for the San Jose Mercury News in 1988. An investigative journalist, Webb became interested in the covert activities of the Central Intelligence Agency, the big C.I.A. Webb created a great of controversy when in 96 he wrote a series of articles claiming that supporters of a CIA-backed guerrilla army in Nicaragua helped trigger America's crack cocaine epidemic in the 1980s. Three of the America's leading papers, the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, and the Washington Post, followed up with reports questioning Webb's conclusions. The San Jose Mercury News came under considerable pressure for the publishing of these stories, and in 1997, Webb left the newspaper. Webb published Dark Alliance, the CIA, the Contras, and the crack cocaine explosion in 1998. Webb worked, you can find that book on Amazon, by the way. Webb worked in the California Assembly, Speaker's Office, Member Services, and for the Joint Legislative Audit Committee. In 2003, Webb began work for the Sacramento News and Review, a weekly publication. Gary Webb was found dead at his home on the 10th of December 2004. He had apparently committed suicide. There's that thing again, where all these people that know too much apparently can't take it anymore and have to kill themselves. Nick Shao published To Kill the Messenger, How the CIA's Crack Cocaine Controversy Destroyed Gary Webb in 2006. This book was later turned into the movie Kill the Messenger in 2014, which is actually on my list of to do tonight. I'll be watching that movie later on. I've always found this story interesting. I just never had a reason to look into it any deeper, but here we are now, so I'm going to be doing that. So, like I mentioned, that book, Dark Alliance, Gary Webb, is on Amazon. Pretty cheap, I might add. Yeah, so it's all very interesting. I'm going to go ahead and link a story as well. An article that I was reading. It's called How Gary Webb Linked the CIA to the Crack Epidemic and Paid the Ultimate Price, by Mr. Marco Margaritoff. Published December 5th, 2019, updated February 18th, 2022. So I got a little more interest lately. And this is on the website allthatisinteresting.com/Gary-Webb. So I'll be linking that in the show notes as well for anybody that wants to go ahead and read that. But we're going to watch a little clip about Mr. Gary Webb here in his own words, a couple of years before his unfortunate death. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look.
Investigative reporting is being sort of squeezed out of the picture, and I think intentionally, because it tends to ruffle feathers. I mean, good investigative reporting does ruffle feathers, and it draws lawsuits.
It should.
And it gets newspapers in trouble. My name's Gary Webb. I am an investigative journalist. I've been an investigative journalist for about 25 years for daily newspapers. And in 1996, I wrote a series of stories entitled Dark Alliance, which was about CIA involvement in drug trafficking. What my story showed was that the cocaine that was being sold in those neighborhoods was coming from mainly one source, and this one source was being used to finance a guerrilla war in Central America.
In 87, the Kerry Committee hearings exposed the CIA drugs for arms operation established to fund the right-wing, always right-wing, Nicaraguan Contra rebels.
The general idea of the CIA dealing drugs was something that the American mainstream press had never written about before, and that's why it prompted outrage among blacks, among drug reform activists, among politicians, by the CIA, by every federal agency involved in the drug war, because it showed they weren't doing their jobs, that it was a fraud.
Initially hailed by the mainstream media as a journalistic coup, Dark Alliance pushed Gary into the spotlight and ignited a nationwide scandal. Sorry, I can't read. Too much crack.
Right after we published the stories, the support we got from the media was very favorable. Newsweek magazine did a big piece on the story and said it was well documented and well researched. The website was getting like 1 million hits a day. There were marches in Watts, there were marches in Compton, there were candlelight vigils. Every California senator
That's all great.
demanded an official investigation.
But
so the story itself is really building momentum.
Despite the level of public outrage, the government chose to...
The government reaction was no reaction. And this, I believe, was a very careful strategy, because nobody was going to believe the government if they came out and said, we didn't do it. The proof was fairly overwhelming, since we had all these government documents showing that it didn't happen. So what happened was they let the so-called liberal press speak for them. And they had the national security reporters at the Washington Post, who coincidentally used to work for the CIA, write stories saying, it doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything. Oh, liberals. All in the name of what? Diversity. Fighting, I don't know, the right to keep and bear crack cocaine. In 1096, the Washington Post published a story that essentially discounted the severity of Gary's claims, of course, asserting that he could not prove direct links to the crack epidemic, nor the exact sums that went to the Contras. They said, nah, he doesn't have to. He's not running numbers for them.
It was a distraction from what the story said, and it became sort of a media war between the Mercury News, which stood behind the story at that point, and the rest of the establishment media, who wanted us to back away from it. And part of that reason was because these major newspapers had written about this issue back in the 1980s, but had written about it very dismissively, as if this is nonsense, it doesn't happen, it never happened. And then 10 years later, we came back with documentation showing that it was absolutely true, and that it was worse than we were.
And then he died.
We had gotten the story out around them, and we had gotten it out in a big way that they couldn't control, and that was through the internet. And I think a lot of this was directed to the Mercury News to say, we don't care what documentation you have, we don't care what kind of story you've got, we set the national news agenda. And if we don't like your story, we will kill your story, regardless of its truth.
Unable to stem the tide of pressure from the mainstream press, Gary's editors withdrew their support and published a public apology for the way that the story was handled. So sure. So sorry, we're telling the truth. Please stop.
The media rejoiced when this came out because it meant they had won. They had forced a newspaper to back away from a story that was true, simply because of this barrage of criticism, of mindless criticism, essentially, that really took its toll on the editors of the newspaper. And they were being seen as sort of outcasts from the club. And I think they made a political decision that it was better in the long run to take a dive on this story and get back in the good graces of the rest of the media. It was essentially a war between my editors and myself, because I wouldn't apologize for the story or back away from the story, and fought them on it.
Why would you?
Publicly. And so they transferred me to a bureau that was 140 miles from where I lived, and I called in sick a lot.
In 1197, Gary Webb quit the San Jose Mercury News and wrote a book about the story and his experience in trying to expose it to the public.
One of the things I'm proudest of in regards to that story is the website that the Mercury News set up, because it really was the first time that a newspaper brought its readers not only into the interior of the paper, but into the reporters' notebooks. This was a story that, as I told my editors, had a very high unbelievability factor built into it. A lot of people were going to say, this can't be true. And this story became a sensation because of the website, not because of the story, but because people could get to it. And they could never have gotten to it before, because the San Jose Mercury News is a small regional newspaper in Northern California that you couldn't read if you lived in New York, or you couldn't read if you lived in LA. But this story you could read anywhere in the world and see all of our documentation. So it became, and we did this on purpose to make it very hard to knock down, to make it very difficult for people to say this didn't happen. But they said it didn't happen anyway.
Good old CRT monitors.
These songs of freedom. These songs of freedom.
Authentic journalism is telling people something that the government doesn't want them to know.
Well, Lord knows we can all use authentic journalists nowadays. Yeah, but it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's rough, right? Obviously, taking things that you know are true, and you have the what do you call it, evidence, sorry, that it's true, and notes and stories, you're covering stories, talking to people, and it's true, but like you're going up against the US government, right? Obviously there's only so much you can fight them on before they just squash you, obviously. Not to diminish his death or anything, but obviously I'm American, and I love my country, but I do not love my government for a lot of things that they've done around the world. For as much as we talk about freedom and being the light in the world and all this stuff, patriotism, blah, 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 which is all great, and I'm all for it. But we cause a lot of fucking problems around the world, and we have for a long time. We stick our fingers in our noses, and I don't say we as in us Americans, I mean our government, because you and I, the regular American here and there, we're not in charge of all this crap, right? We don't come up with these plans to invade other countries and overthrow governments and steal money and kill people, and that's not what we do. So I don't mean us as an American citizen, but our U.S. government does that shit all the time. A lot of people don't believe it. Like, you can tell a lot of these stories to people, and they're just be like, "Nah, bro, that's crazy, bro. You just making shit up, or you just heard that online, and oh, you heard it on the internet, so it must be true, bro." Look at Vietnam, right? Look at JFK. This other video that we did here about the Oklahoma City bombing. Don't ever put it past the American government to create problems that they can fix with their own made up solutions that try to restrict your freedoms even further. It's don't ever underestimate the US government to create these kinds of problems for a reason. Obviously there might be people that just do shit just to do shit, right? But like, these things get done for a reason. And for all those people out there that think like, oh, it's our government would never do anything to us like that, and they would never create problems for us, and they just want our best interests at heart. Really? When? Look at all these examples that I'm giving you. These people don't give a shit about any of us, right? They just, whatever they can do to make some more money or set themselves up for the future, set their family up for future office, for future positions in office. Maybe like, oh, I want my son to grow up and be like a senator here and there, or be the president one day. They will set themselves up for the future. It doesn't matter who they have to step on to get there. Should these people even backstab their own family? You think they're not going to do anything to you just to get to where they want to be? Please, you're nothing. It's so, I know a lot of this shit sounds like conspiracy, and I get it, right? But look at things with an open mind. Think, like, oh, this is the official story, but what if this, or what if that, and what if this person's lying, or what if this person's telling the truth? Man, be surprised. The last few years have been great for conspiracy theorists. They're like 100 and something when it comes to conspiracies. It just people just don't want to take a look at things, or they still think it can be true. But it can be true. You just got to look into it a little bit deeper. But I get off my soapbox here, stop ranting. But yeah, it's unfortunate. Rest in peace, Gary Webb. But all these groups and stuff. This was back in 2002, 2004 when he died. Imagine what they're doing now. How we invade other countries, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these other places. I served in the military, but a lot of us don't agree with what happens out there and what we have to do out there. But I know it sounds dumb, but we got to do it because we signed a contract. Yeah, it's sucks, but if we don't take over the world, I mean, who else are we going to leave it to, right? So might as well be us, so that way we can have a little bit of freedom here in the States. That's going away real quick, but anywho, that's another topic for another episode. But yeah, guys, it's very unfortunate. Taking a look a little deeper as well at this whole story. If you guys have the time to check out the movie Kill the Messenger, 2014 film by Michael Cuesta. So it's called Kill the Messenger. You guys take a look at that. It's with Jeremy Renner, so he's pretty good. Yeah, I have everything linked down below, as well as that story that's in allthat'sinteresting.com. How Gary Webb linked the CIA to the crack epidemic and paid the ultimate price. I'll link all that down below, as well as all our social media: Instagram, Twitter, Getter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and all that good stuff. You guys are catching us on YouTube, which is obviously where this is going to be at. And you aren't already a subscriber, please consider hitting that subscribe button for us, as well as turning on that bell icon so you don't miss an episode in the future, and giving us a thumbs up. That'll really help us out as well. Also, if you guys like what we do here, you can go ahead and share this episode with a friend, family, loved one, colleague, whatever you got. Spread the word. That'll help us out as well. We'll be back with some more episodes as well for the podcast. You guys have any topic recommendations or guests or anything, let me know. Shoot us an email at thetruthdefender1776@gmail.com. I appreciate you guys as always. Make sure you all stay safe out there, stay blessed, and most of all, stay frosty.